Hi everyone, my name is Lee Schulter and I am the Practice Manager for Design and Technology here at Aquent Australia. Today I'm presenting from Gadigal Country in Sydney, and in the spirit of reconciliation, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connection to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. There's many of our existing community here, but for the uninitiated, Aquent is a global work solutions company specializing in marketing, design, and technology. We have Aquent Talent that provides freelance, contract, and permanent recruitment services. We also offer employer of record services. We have Aquent Studios, which is our global co-creation agency. We have Aquent Accessibility, which helps businesses of all sizes with their digital accessibility needs. And we have Aquent Gymnasium, which is our free online learning platform. Just a quick little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So we're going to be recording this webinar and a recording will be sent to you afterwards as soon as it's ready. I'm sure there's going to be some key takeaways that you'll want to watch back and digest in your own time. So keep an eye out for that, hopefully coming through early part of next week. Closed captions are available if you need them. You can turn those on at the bottom of your screen. I'm going to be running a Q&A at the end of the presentation. So if you've got questions for the presenters, then please add them into the Q&A box at the bottom. There is a chat function as well, but for questions specifically for the Q&A, then you can pop them into the Q&A section. And you can also upvote other people's questions if there's things that you'd really like to see answered yourself. I'd like you to encourage you to use emojis to express yourself throughout the presentation. So you can respond if anything is really resonating with you that Jason and Tim are saying. You can find the emojis at the bottom of the screen. And then just finally, your feedback's really important to us. So as soon as the webinar finishes, you're going to be automatically redirected to a short survey. It's literally going to take you a couple of minutes to complete. You can let us know what you thought of today's session and any ideas on the type of stuff that you'd like to see from our future events. Now on to why we're all here today. So earlier this year, back in March, Jason Ross and Tim O'Neill, who are the co-founders of Time Under Tension, ran a webinar for us on the amazing power of Gen AI, and it went absolutely nuts. One of the most successful DigiTalks events we've ever had. It's had the most views of any webinar we've ever hosted. For those of you that were unfortunate enough to have missed it, it is available to watch back on the Aquent Australia YouTube channel. So definitely go back and check that out after this session. Feedback was resoundingly positive. Everybody saying, we want more, we need more, you've got to bring them back. And so we've listened, we've delivered, and by very popular demand, the guys have been gracious enough to give up their time for a second installment. So I'm really excited that I get to introduce them to you today. Jason Ross and Tim O'Neill are the co-founders of Time Under Tension, which is Australia's first generative AI experience agency. Also hot off the press, have just been announced as finalists for 2 categories at this year's B&T Awards. So one for the Emerging Agency and also for the Marketing Technology Company of the Year, which is super exciting. So a big congrats to Jason, Tim and all of the team. Before founding Time Under Tension, Jason amassed vast experience in digital product and service design. He held roles as CEO and GM of leading digital agencies in the UK and Australia, served as MD at Accenture Song and VP at Frog, which is part of the Capgemini group. And in a previous life, his Time Under Tension partner in crime, Tim, started a successful digital agency, which grew to be one of the largest privately owned digital agencies in Australia and was acquired by Accenture Interactive. He then worked as MD at Accenture Interactive and also founded an online automotive startup called Summon. The talk that they're going to be giving us today is on the advanced uses of Gen AI to transform CX. So over to you, Jason and Tim. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Lee, and thank you, Aquent, for inviting us back. It's awesome to be back here. So I'll spare you the introduction to Time Under Tension, other than to say that we co-founded this business around about just less than 2 years ago now, and it is staggering the pace of which things are moving in the generative AI space. We ourselves sometimes struggle to keep up with it, so we're excited to be able to share with you, at the very least, what's changed in the last half year. So for those of you that joined us half a year ago for the session here at Aquent, and to talk a little bit more about some of the impacts of these changes on designing for and using customer experiences. Before we get stuck in, just to encourage you, per Lee's note around emojis, give us some emojis here about, give us a sense for how you're using generative AI today. And whilst you're doing that, also to encourage you to sign up to our newsletter. If you can't make the whole of this session, or you don't want to wait half a year for the next AQuint session, we are regularly posting updates in the Gen AI space on our newsletter. Lots of hearts. So on occasion at work. Awesome. Thank you very much for the emojis. Every day at work. So I think, yeah, I don't think we've got a screenshot of the last time we did this, Tim, but if we did, I think the emojis would be slightly different to the last time, a lot more use at work. Awesome. So to kick us off, Tim's going to take us through on the image side of things. What's changed since the last time we gave this presentation? Tim.
Thanks, Jace. Hi, everybody. Yeah, we're excited to be back, and thanks for the great intro. Something that we have taken pains at with this presentation is to make sure there's nothing duplicated from the presentation we did in March. And as Jason said, we wanted to kind of kick off with a comparison of a then and now. Everyone, will be familiar with that generative AI is just moving super quickly, and we wanted to kind of highlight some of those changes, starting with image generation. So the image on the left is an image created using Midjourney 5.2, which that was the model that was available back in March earlier this year. And just concentrating on the image on the left, at the time you go, this is incredible. I can't believe that I'm typing text into a box and I hit enter. 30 seconds later, I get four. What at the time you go, that's photographic. Like that is nearly perfect. But the eyes are a bit too perfect. The skin's a little bit too glossy. All of the people kind of come out looking pretty similar. Whereas on the image on the right is from like about a week ago, using a new image model that's been out for about a month called Flux. And when put in the hands of a really talented photographer and an AI artist, in this case, a guy called Roop Renisto, you can get what is really, truly portrait photo quality images from AI. And when you compare it to what we thought at the time was pretty incredible back in March, it's just chalk and cheese. The one on the left really does look fake, and the one on the right is just incredible. This is another shot from Roop Renisto, and I mean the point I'd like to make here is that this again is a fully AI generated image from a text prompt. And I really now liken it to photography, where like I have a camera, I have an SLR, I've got a good camera, and I can go out and take a passably good portrait photo that would be better than my kids could take. But you give the same camera or a better camera to a professional photographer or an artist, and you get something like this. And I will never be able to produce imagery as good as this with AI, and it takes talent as well as the tools. And both those things have just been coming along a long way in the last 6 months, as both people with hands-on experience, so the talent, and also the tools developing. Another comparison, and this is a little bit further back, but at the time in March was still state of the art of what is called image fine-tuning, or fine-tuning an image model. What image models are not very good at is drawing pictures of things that is not well known in the data set, so things that are not well known on the internet. So in this example, I gave it a brand new Porsche 911 that had just been released and was not in the training data. So you could not get Stable Diffusion or Midjourney to generate images of this car that actually looked correct. With fine tuning, you give the AI model a whole lot of images of that exact product, what you want to generate, in this case, about 30 images of the particular Porsche 911 Dakar. And on the left, it was like, okay, that's kind of pretty good. It's way better than you could get out of any of the base models. It actually looked like the car, not like a generic 911. But, it was definitely not perfect. It's the details are not there. On the right is using the same method with the same training data, exactly the same 30 images, but using Flux, which is a model we'll keep talking about on and on. I love it. It's incredible. And now this photo, the car details are pretty much perfect. I did a blog post and I did side-by-side images of the real car and AI generated images of this specific car. And it's really, really hard now to tell the difference. And you can get really very realistic dynamic shots like the one on the right as well. So again, that's just generated purely from a text prompt, but you get pretty incredible photos with the product detail being correct. Still not like really perfect, but it's 95% there. This is an example from an AI artist called Boris Knoll doing exactly that same technique using the same toolkit, going a bit sort of harder with it than I did in my quick experiments. And this is, again, a fine-tuned model using Flux, or a fine-tuned model of Flux with images of this particular car. And this is generated from a text prompt, and the detail is just extraordinary. I mean, there's no way anyone would say that is an AI-generated image unless you told them. And I think no one cares, right? Like if you're looking at an ad for this particular car, you're not looking and going, I don't know, how was that image made? It's just something that is now in the toolkit of advertisers and marketers and finished artists and designers to have this kind of quality of output using fine-tuning with the current models. Another thing that these models are just now getting really good at is actually generating text within the image. So on the left-hand side is, this is actually today, like using, well, not today, a few days ago, using Midjourney, but the latest Midjourney model is still not good at text. So I typed in a text prompt of create a poster for time under tension with a logo in the top left-hand corner and some text and a balloon. And obviously the text is all mucked up, which is kind of standard and what you expect with the image generation models from up until about a month ago. But now, in the past month, or probably maybe 2 months, there's been two models. One is called Leonardo AI Phoenix, which is an awesome Australian company, and the other is Flux, which I mentioned before, where that image on the right is also generated purely from a text prompt with create a poster for a company called Time Under Tension, have a logo in the top left-hand corner, have this copy on the page, have some balloons, and a description of the layout. And it can faithfully stick to the layout. It can get the text right and also generate the images. So that on the right-hand side is just a JPEG generated in about 30 seconds from a text prompt. So pretty incredible in terms of opening up new things you can do with these models just out of the box, like creating a poster or a thank you card or a brochure or whatever. And it's still pretty early. Like, you can't control like the font, for example, things that you would do if you're, as a designer, you cannot do with an image generation model. But this is still just incredible advancements from where we were even 2 months ago. This is just another example of those two things combined. This is a fine-tuned model with the car that I showed before. And then purely from a text prompt, which is shown on the left-hand side, and it's generating the image of the car, which is faithfully reproduced because it's a fine-tuned model. It's in the scene that I've described, so on Mars, vast landscape, red dust being kicked up, and with the text, and it's actually generated the text. The only glitch in this is the comma at the end, which I could have photoshopped out, but I wanted to be authentic. And so that's the only kind of bug in this image is the comma at the end. But if you're a Porsche and you want to do a photo shoot on the moon of this car, that's really super expensive right now. So this is a pretty good alternative. A question that came up just this morning, we were doing a presentation to an ad agency, kind of a similar topic to today. And somebody asked, how do we create brand safe images using the best tools? Because a problem that anyone here who's using image generation tools, anyone on the call, will know that if you're using Flux or Stable Diffusion or Midjourney, and if you type in the prompt here was like sneakers on a male runner, that it will almost always generate a logo on the sneakers. It might be Nike, in this case it's Asics. I can't use that. I can't use that in my campaign. I can't use that in my advertising. I don't own that IP. So that's sort of a quite a well-known drawback. The solution to that, one solution is Adobe Firefly, and Adobe Firefly's main kind of calling card is it's only trained on brand safe and images and IP. So it won't have the Asics logo in there, it won't have the Nike logo in there, it won't have the Apple logo. So you won't accidentally breach someone's IP if you're using Firefly. But the downside is the model is not quite up to par with the best models. If you look, I've just highlighted on that image, the shoe details are a bit wonky. There's a few like glitches with the laces and things like that. The skin is very glossy. So it's just not a kind of a high enough quality to use in an advertising campaign. And this question came up today as well, what's the answer? And this is something I did literally like an hour ago before this presentation, was experimenting with a workflow where I used Adobe Firefly for the concepting. And I know that Firefly is going to create a brand safe image for me as a base. It's not going to let me break the rules. But then using Flux to take that image, providing it as an image input, and then having Flux redraw that brand safe image into a higher quality image. And if you look at the detail of the shoes and the laces and the tabs on the back of the heel, everything on those shoes is perfect. And the skin looks realistic now. So we basically kind of upgraded the realism, but with it's still brand safe, and I'm not breaching ASICS or not going to get sued by Nike.
Thanks, Tim, and awesome hack. And I'm just wondering whether, as your next challenge, you can get Matt Damon in the Porsche. So let's take a look at what's changed in the world of large language models, and probably quite appropriately, just this morning we woke up to some news from last night in the States that ChatGPT now has a new model, which is O1. And we haven't had a lot of time to play with it ourselves. It's literally just available as of this morning. So this has been designed, a lot of you that have been playing with ChatGPT, which seems like it's most of you, will know that ChatGPT is very good at providing answers, but also very good at rushing to give answers and can occasionally hallucinate. And this version, which has been codenamed Strawberry, has been designed to add a layer of reasoning before it provides you with an answer. So it's good fun to play with. You can sort of, when you type in a complex prompt, it will start to think, and you can click on the thinking and see the rationalizing that it's doing. Part of the rationalizing that it's doing is checking against ethical and safety guidelines that it's been provided by OpenAI as well. So there's a whole bunch of exploring to be done with what this new model offers. Another big change in the large language model space, and very appropriate to sort of like the prototyping side of things, is Claude released something called Artifacts. If you haven't used Claude, then this is Claude that you can see here. And we've sort of got two panels. On the left-hand side, similar to ChatGPT, asking Claude to help me write a kid's book based on a publication. And you can see just having that chat with Claude. But on the right-hand side, you can see in real time that Claude has this artifact window. So these artifacts are the workings in progress. So here I'm asking it to help me write a book, and it's presenting the chapters on the right-hand side. And you can work with it in real time, and it updates the artifact in real time. We've got a short video of this in action, which I think is a good demonstration of potentially around prototyping, how you can do some rapid work with Claude. So here I'm asking it to create a prototype of a web app using for a basic rating system. And you can see what it's doing here is it's going away and actually starting to write the code in the artifact window, and it's then rendering that code. So simple rating system that we asked for, but likewise, you can sort of work with it here and asking it here to change the way it's working a little bit. So if someone rates anything lower than a 9, that it automatically gives a 10 out of 10. So you point here showing that you can sort of work real time with these prototypes, and the artifacts will update and present you with the code that's being created. Yeah, so if anyone rates lower than 9, tell a joke and rank it as a 10 is what we've asked it to do here. And it goes away and sort of creates all of the code behind that.
And this will be in the feedback form later on.
Another big change, and it's moving very fast, are multimodal large language models. And we found this example, which we think is really cool, which I'll let that play in a second. But multimodal large language models are essentially the bringing together of a lot of different capabilities. So right now, You might need to go to a Midjourney to produce an image. You might need to go to a Suno to produce a song. And where things are moving towards is that the multimodal large language models will have a lot of those capabilities in one model. Google Gemini is one of those, and this little experience has been built with Gemini. So if you could play that, Tim.
Yo, 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 it's Pizza Pie coming at ya. Mozzarella gooey, sauce looking slick, yeah. With basil on top, looking green and fresh. Every bite's a party, no time to stress.
Are you thirsty?
Now I'm just brown and dry.
I'm fried to perfection, always on time.
What's your favorite food?
My favorite food? Sunlight.
Yo, it's Coffee Bean. Stop.
I'm Sunshine.
Always keeping things in line. Here to cut.
The fluffy wind whisperer. I wave in the breeze and dance in the sun, always smiling.
Everest.
That's a lot of fun, and it reminded me when I sort of had a look at that. It reminded me of the early iPhone days. Tim, if you can move on. I remember there was one of the most popular apps, and this was like just a few months after the iPhone launched, was the iBeer app. And for those that do remember it, I'm not sure everyone will remember it. For those who remember it, it was a huge gimmick. I since found out, I did a bit of looking into it, the guy that built this was making $20,000 a day at the time from the app, which was hugely successful. So that was a gimmick, but it was using a lot of the features that the iPhone had, the accelerometer and things like that. 4 years later, it took, it was 4 years later that Google launched Google Maps on the iPhone. So watching Every sort of makes me think of the same sort of thing. Like, yes, very gimmicky, but it's making use of all the multimodal capabilities, from different voices to seeing the world around, and then being able to create experiences off the back of that. Tim's going to talk through some video changes.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I'll cover this pretty briefly, but this was a video that we included, and actually I'll hit play and I'll just turn the audio down and talk over the top. This was in our last presentation, and this was, at the time, pretty much like the bleeding edge of what was possible with video generation. And this was using an app called Runway, which is still probably the best and most pioneering video AI generated app. And I mean, it's really cool, really well edited, but it's very highly stylized because you can't really do video at the time, couldn't do video realism with AI generated video as compared to now. And this was both of these are spec ads, by the way. They're not real ads. They are things that video artists have made to kind of show off their capabilities. And I've used a real brand as an example. I'll turn the volume right down. Actually, I'll let this play. So this is a more recent example from July 2024. Again, using Runway, but the more recent model.
Volvo for life.
And sort of once again, another example of where AI in the hands of someone who is not a professional videographer and not very good, you can get pretty rubbish results, but you put it in the hands of a talented video producer or editor, and you can get really incredible quality like that. So last example of what has changed then and now. And this is really very new. In the last month, has been some government sort of interest and intervention, maybe a bit of a strong word, but policy sort of creation from the federal government. One on the left is for government departments, and it's some policies and guidelines, and also some recommendations, but also some mandatory things that government departments need to do around the responsible use of AI. So transparency in the use of AI, audits to know where AI has been used in the departments, things like that. And on the right-hand side is come from a different department, but this is for business. And this is a voluntary AI safety standard, and there are 10 what they call guardrails and recommendations for how Australian businesses can and should be using AI safely. They're all pretty sensible, and it's worth going and having a look if you're sort of at early stages and if you don't have much around the use of policies and guidelines within your own business of how your staff would use AI, then it's a good kind of starting point for that. So just going to pause for a sec. We're halfway through, which is when we're going pretty much bang on time, which is great. We did this last time, and we had a really good reception in the March session with Aquint, and so we thought we would repeat it again. The session that we're doing today is what we call an inform session, and we do this for clients, and it's 1.5 hour session presentations that are tailored to the business. So we charge for these, but thanks to sort of doing this digital talk with Aquint, we have 2 that we're going to be giving away complimentary as a prize draw. So all we have to do is scan the QR code, or I think the link to the form is going to be put in the chat. Go and put your details in. We'll early next week draw 2 companies that will win a complimentary inform session from Jason. And as I said before, it will be kind of like this, but better and tailored to you, your audience, and normally your business. And also normally we do those in person, assuming you're in either Melbourne or Sydney. I'm in Melbourne, Jason's in Sydney. So handing back to Jason.
Cheers, Tim. So moving on to sort of how do some of these changes apply to what we can do in the experience space, and the things that we're seeing, the things that we're building and doing firmly sit in 2 camps: customer experience related things and employee experience related things. So I'm going to talk through and actually just share a few examples of employee experience tools that have emerged since some of these capabilities have emerged. The first slide here is just talking to some research, and there's a lot of research that's coming out now around how much better or faster are humans when we work with machines. This is a great research paper. It's a little bit old now, but I think it still firmly stands insofar as there are industries where AI is shown to be performing very well, especially for sort of professional services type of roles. This particular piece of research was conducted together, I think, with BCG. BCG consultants are achieving certain tasks with and without AI, and just showing that they were faster and the quality of output was higher when they were using AI. So some examples of this. This particular example is from a piece of client work that we have done, and this is integrating with the client's content management. They have thousands of products, and the challenge they have there is applying consistency, compliance checks to a lot of the content that they have. So what you can see here is essentially a behind the scenes process that's occurring, where the large language model is able to take the source copy, and it's able to run a compliance check on that content and then actually work the revision to that content. And this is the type of thing that would take, I think we calculated it would take weeks for a human to work through and go and apply those compliance checks to all of the content. And it extends not just to the copy. We've also applied the checks to the images. So in this case, they deal with baby products. So there are very strict rules around what is a compliant image and what isn't. So we've sort of fine-tuned the AI to be able to detect a compliant piece, a compliant image, and if it's not compliant, where it's not. Likewise, applying tone of voice and rewriting content. And you can see here what the AI is doing on the left-hand side, taking out-of-date copy and then rewriting up-to-date branded copy, and also working on some of the SEO keywords too. So that's sort of like just a window into what's going on behind the scenes across thousands of product descriptions. The next example is something, we actually get asked this a lot. Can AI create my presentations for me? Can it create a branded presentation? So we thought we'd take the challenge on, and one of our developers went and smashed this out, GPPT. And you can see a few things happening here. So first of all, providing the tool with a CSV of raw data. And here, this is some survey results, relatively unstructured. You can see the question and a bunch of answers. And we're feeding that to the tool. That's what we're going to ask it to put into a PowerPoint template. The next one here is providing it with a branded PowerPoint. You can ask ChatGPT to create a presentation today, but it doesn't do a good job. It doesn't know how to brand presentation. So here we're providing it with a PowerPoint template. And then we're providing some basic instructions for how, what is it we're asking it to do, the type of writing we want it to analyze. It comes out with the framework. It writes all of the different, and you can edit the different structure of the presentation, and then it will go away. And we've sped this up, obviously, but it takes around a minute or two, and it produces, this is all sort of 100% out of the AI brain. So we're now happy that we can tell people that ask us, yes, it is possible to get it to do it. It's just not necessarily that straightforward at this point in time. Another really interesting space in consideration of sort of CX planning is synthetic users. This has moved on a great deal. There's now established research starting to emerge to suggest that large language models have a high degree of accuracy in predicting human behavior and sentiments. So in this example here, you can see one way of sort of using a synthetic user group. I'm sort of creating a mock scenario and asking the AI to help me with launching a new swimwear fashion brand, and to interview 50 people of 17 to 30 years old to find out what they find important as it relates to swimwear, sustainability, and a whole bunch of other things that it was asking in the questionnaire. And what it does is it goes and creates 50 synthetic users, 50 mock personas. It creates the survey, and it will go and ask each of those 50 mock users that questionnaire, synthesize the results, and then play that back to me. So I've got a good indication of what those users might think. Now, definitely not a replacement for going to speak to real users. However, it's certainly a great way for very early ideation and testing of hypotheses. The last thing we wanted to show you in the employee experience space is actually a tool that we've built, a tool that we've called Peak. And we deal a lot with marketing teams. And some of the challenges we were getting asked by marketing teams is, how can our team use AI consistently across the business? So there might be one great prompter in the business, but how do we use it? How do we get our whole team to be able to use AI safely? So we built Peak, and Peak is an interface that will store a whole bunch of marketing related skills. You can see some of those skills here, and there's a bit of a video that has a bit more of the screenshots in there, which I'll let you play, Tim. Just by way of a simple example, that synthetic user survey is one of the skills which typically you'd need to do a whole bunch of prompts and potentially even create a bespoke app to make work. That's one of the skills that's in Peak that would allow anyone in the business to, at a click of a button, basically create one of those surveys. Yeah, that's all on the EX side of things. Tim, over to you, mate.
Yeah, thank you. So the flip side of the employee experience is the outward-facing customer experiences, and there's been lots of exciting things in the last 6 months since we presented here last in this area as well. Something that's really cool is the use of large language models to do personalization at scale. And normally doing that within ChatGPT, that's fine in terms of creating content, personalizing it. But this is a great example from KLM Airlines of having the language model behind the scenes doing the personalization, in this case of a trip itinerary. So letting this video play, the first thing it's doing is capturing some of my interests and the things that I want in my travel, and building up a profile of myself and my interests. And in a sec, it'll also ask me for who I'm traveling with and when I'm traveling. The thing I love about this is ChatGPT is a pretty boring interface. This is using kind of the smarts of ChatGPT, but wrapping it in a really beautiful interactive site. So what you probably don't have time to read, but all that copy is personalized based on the questions or the answers that I gave to the questions in the setup at the start. So a really cool example. One of the things that we showed back in March was the use of some AI video tools like HeyGen and Synthesia to do translation. Not translation of text copy, but translation of a video. So HeyGen, for example, you can record a video of yourself and it teach the model what you look like and your mannerisms, etc. And then you can prompt it to have your video, your speaking in English, translated into whatever language you like, and the video would be translated and lip synced. McDonald's used this in a campaign in a really clever way, so I'll hit play.
I get frustrated not being able to communicate with her. There's a huge disconnect there.
If I could speak Mandarin with her, I think she'd be a lot more happy. It gets hard because sometimes it'll just be as simple as, oh, we need to go here, and I don't know how to say that.
I wish that my grandma could learn English, so when she's hearing other people, she feels like she kind of is missing out.
If I could speak my grandma's language, I would tell her, I'm just eternally grateful for all the sacrifices you've ever made for me.
Grandma, thank you for always being my biggest supporter.
इतना प्यार करती हूँ कि मेरे से बातें खत्म ही नहीं होती.
Ako'y lubos na.
So the video has not worked properly, but if you imagine that person's now speaking in another language, it's perfectly translated and perfectly lip synced. So kind of cool idea of McDonald's using AI technology in a campaign.
I
might skip this. Should I show the chase or should I skip it? You're muted, Jason. I'm going to
I said, yeah, show it. It's very quick and it's a bit crazy.
All right. This is an example of AI-generated video in a campaign for McDonald's. There you go. That's pretty fun. Something we wanted to talk about is how AI can be used in a design process. And this is something we talk to our clients about all the time, not necessarily a design process, but any process. That this diagram here, this is from a company called Spectra, so excuse me. What you don't do is expect that AI is going to do this entire process for you, that you sort of chuck something in a problem or a need at the start and it's going to spit out an app at the end or a product at the end. A good design process has all of these different steps and stages. And the way that we like to think about it and sort of coach our clients is every one of these stages probably has a different AI tool that can assist in some way. And some of them maybe less than others, but definitely like things like market research, value proposition, objectives, like really great tasks for a language model. Design and DevOps, we sort of showed how prototyping and coding has been coming along really a long way. Research and validation, Jason showed how you can spin up synthetic users to get kind of quick and dirty market research and feedback on a product or on ideas. And then the launch, you get into sort of A/B testing and multivariate and optimization, and there are AI tools to help with that as well. But if there are sort of 8 steps in this process, then every one of those would probably use a different tool, or at least if it's the same tool, you'd be using it in a different way. And to illustrate that point, we did this a mock-up of a UX process totally fueled with AI. And before I hit play, the goal was to see in under a minute, can we design a website and have it some kind of form of market research with it. So step 1, I'll actually talk over the steps as plain. So this video goes for 59 seconds. I'm going to talk really, really fast. So the top left-hand corner is doing user research, a synthetic user survey on ideas for content for a new website for time and attention. Top left is taking the sitemap from the current time and attention website and redrawing that using AI into an editable sitemap. Top right is using the sitemap and creating a wireframe sketch using AI, obviously. Bottom left is taking that wireframe sketch and building a clickable prototype. So that's a clickable prototype and artifact. Bottom middle is taking the clickable prototype and the wireframe and then converting that into an image using Flux with text. And then the last step is using Claude to upload that image of the website concept and asking it to test that against the WCAG accessibility guidelines, of which it totally failed. But this is demonstrated, this is obviously not what you would or should do, but it's an illustration of what you can do. In under a minute, we've gone from nothing to ideas, to sitemap, to wireframe, clickable prototype, concept design, and usability, or not usability, and accessibility review.
Tim, I just love the dramatic music, mate.
And me talking really, really fast.
Yeah. So at this sort of the final part to run through, sort of where is everything going and a few future scenarios. Yeah, no one really knows where the future's going, and you can sort of see here a range of expert views that range from the capabilities of AI are plateauing, and some people even hypothesizing that they're getting worse as AIs train themselves on their own data, all the way through to AGI, where people like Sam Altman are planning to create not just AIs that are good at doing individual tasks, but AIs that are able to actually do jobs better than humans can do jobs. I guess here we sort of see things a little bit in the middle there. We do see almost every week new tools being launched, so we can definitely see that things are growing and the capabilities. A lot of the things that we showed just half a year ago were not necessarily production ready. Today you can start, video was an example of that.
We've added 5 new slides in the last day to this deck.
Yeah, so we definitely see things as not plateauing. In the space of CX, let this video run, but these guys have done a great job in sort of bringing in a futuristic
when you think about
interface
generative interface, the first concept.
Well, that's cool. You can edit play, I guess, Tim.
How today we often think in kind of conventional static terms about the type of experiences that we have to create. But if you can think about experiences as component parts, be it knowledge or content or design. Is anyone here in product design know the idea of a design system, the atomic component parts that kind of make up an interface? Absolutely, it's the same model here, but also think about that in functional terms. And then apply the real-time prediction and reasoning of AI and the relational rules that we'll design. And these are the ingredients for generative interfaces. And what I want to try and do is show us. So, okay, good. So this is a home-brewed version of the NASA app. I'm going to scroll down. So I'm going to move into this article here. And by the way, discovering potentially the atmospheric conditions for life on an exoplanet, that's absolutely astounding. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to long press on this little paragraph here and say, so where actually is this? And it's dynamically inserted that piece of content directly into the page. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to move into this image. Let's chat. So is this potentially water?
Potentially, yes. There could actually be water on K2-18b, and not just a little, a lot. Oceans of water under a hydrogen-rich atmosphere.
Really?
Yeah. And if that's true, it means there could be other planets out there like ours that have the conditions to support life as we know it. Can you imagine?
So what you're seeing here I'm able to do is multimodal. I'm talking, I'm drawing, I'm typing. I'm going to close out of this just for a second.
All right, Jess, we'll move.
Yeah. And these are absolutely not beta sort of features. These are things that you can start building with today. And this is sort of like where things are going from and where they're going to. When in the past, creating digital products used to mean sort of designing, web first experiences, and then sort of how does that, mobile first experiences, how might that play on a computer, on a desktop? Now we have sort of so many different components to what comprises a UI, and a lot of that being Gen AI enabled in, voice and new wearables that are emerging, the ability to converse with a website, as you just saw. And where we see things moving to is that there'll be individual UIs for different users. So you'll be able to get an experience in the way that you most prefer, whether that be voice or whether that be clicking, tapping, speaking. So we think that there's a lot, being in the UX space and designing experiences, a lot of the things that you've seen here are things that you can start playing with right now. I think that pretty much takes us to the tail end. So I think we've got about 12 minutes now for some Q&A. Thank you very much for those that stuck around all this time, and we'll happily take questions now. I think, should we go to the Q&A to do that, Lee? Is that the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both so much for that. That was awesome. Absolutely mind-blowing stuff. I think a lot of the emojis flying around with the astonished faces leads me to believe that most people here felt the same. Going to jump into the Q&A. There's already quite a few questions in there. I'll try to get through as many as possible. If you do have questions that you want to ask, pop them in the Q&A. Couple of quick reminders before we jump in. One, again, about the survey. So as soon as the webinar wraps up, you're going to be taken to a survey. If you could please stick around just for 2 minutes to give us the feedback, that would be great. And then the recording of this is going to be sent out probably early part of next week. So keep an eye out for that as well.
The survey form, anything less than a 10, I think it tells a joke and switches it back to a 10, right?
Correct. So I'll work through as many questions as I can. So one here from Ron. He says, how easily are we able to detect or reverse engineer whether a photo is AI generated or not? Use case example for criminal forensics, whether to look at unauthenticated evidence.
Yeah, there's a lot of work going into content credentials from all the major players, and Adobe lead a content credentials initiative, which is like a standard that pretty much all of the main players have opted into, which is going to mean that, and I think actually a lot of them already do this, an image will be watermarked with if it was AI generated, and also if it was taken through a camera. So new cameras from a new Nikon camera will have content credentials to say this is a real photo in the metadata, and an image generated in Midjourney will have this is an AI generated image. It's not foolproof, but that's there's a lot of effort going into that right now.
Yeah, perfect. One here from Simon. There's actually quite a few people that are just asking for your thoughts or comments on certain things, so I'll work through those. Any comments or thoughts on Klarna's announcement that they're ending their relationship with Salesforce and Workday because of their Gen AI capabilities?
Yeah, I didn't read the full press, but I mean, to be honest, Klarna are just out there dropping the mic on Gen AI stuff like every couple of months, and I think they're doing it really kind of for attention. So, no comment, but I think Klarna are out for the press release.
And also Google started to penalize content from an SEO ranking perspective. So again, what's your thoughts on this? I'm guessing obviously AI generated content.
There's
Jason?
I was just going to say that Google are a little bit under threat from the way generative AI models are working. I think that Bing was almost the dead search engine until ChatGPT was released, and it uses Bing to conduct a lot of its web searches. And there are new age tools like Perplexity, which are now enabling sort of a new generation of search where it'll go scour the web and come back and synthesize a lot of the results for you. I think the penalizing is it's penalizing you if you generate content that you then try to search engine optimize. So they're trying to stop the flurry of AI generated articles from appearing in search, is where the penalizing is sort of like focusing on. But I think looking beyond that is interesting, and seeing how do you get your content to appear in the next version of ChatGPT? Some of the more interesting areas to be looking at from an SEO standpoint, because certainly the way people search is going to rapidly change. It already is.
Question here from Richard. He says, has there been any legal precedents that you're aware of?
In which bit? Like there's a lot of lawsuits going on. But like in images, text generation, everywhere, so it's a bit hard to narrow that question down. Maybe you could add a follow-up clarification if there's a specific area.
One here from an anonymous attendee. Will AI do away with 3D modeling tools?
Good question.
That's a really good question, because I would say that, first of all, with 3D modeling, first of all, take a look at what NVIDIA are doing around things like the Omniverse initiative, and sort of seeing how they're going from text prompt to 3D model environment. There will definitely be, I guess it's one of those new frontiers. So there's a lot of, text generation is well established, and you can do a whole heap of stuff with text, and images is now, as you saw from some of the examples, almost indistinguishable from real life images. Videos are getting there, and probably within the next half year, there'll be models like Sora that allow you to produce, 10 minutes worth of video with one prompt. So yes, safe to say there already are tools out there that allow you to go. I think Blockade Labs was one where you can go from text prompt to 3D mesh, 3D environment. So Gen AI will definitely move into that space. Whether it will replace the tools, I mean, we're working with some interior designers now. I can tell you there's such a high degree of craft. It's hard to imagine where a tool will come in and replace the amount of craft that goes into.
Most of the R&D that I've seen, and there's a lot of R&D in the space, is not trying to replace it, but trying to go from a prompt or 2D to create a 3D model. So you still end up with a 3D model, which you did then use a 3D modeling app to render and to create the scenes and things, not sort of leapfrogging that to the final image.
A question here from Nicholas says, when tuning image models or AI systems using images of objects such as cars, isn't the work of the photographers who took these images being utilized? And given that AI relies on these existing images to learn and generate outputs, how does copyright come into play, and where should the line be drawn between using these images for AI training and respecting the original creator's rights?
Yeah, good question. There are two methods for fine-tuning. One is style, and the other is object. The example I gave was object, and in the example of the Porsche 911, I used 30 images, but they were all from different people, all different styles, mostly from the manufacturer. Some were 3D renders. So it's not actually taking any one particular, it doesn't care about the style. It's ignoring that and looking at the object, which is how I can then recreate the object kind of accurately. So I don't think there's any concerns in that scenario. More of a concern is when you do style training, which is exactly the same process, but you, instead of 30 pictures of a Porsche 911, if it was 30 Annie Leibovitz photos, and then train it on her style, and then I can recreate it photos in that style. That's obviously problematic. Legally, kind of untested, but ethically pretty kind of clear that that's not something that you should be doing.
One here from David. It says, what skills and competencies will become important for product and design professionals as Gen AI becomes more prevalent?
Well, there's probably a few answers to that. I'll say that one thing that, you know, what Tim has been showing with the fine tuning of product images. So a lot of brands will spend a lot of time in producing product-based images and shoots and expensive processes to get those. So I think, as you know, one area, the fine tuning of models, as that gets better and better, the ability to be able to you know, not go into expensive photo shoots, but use some of the trained content to be able to produce very accurate product images is one. Tim, anything else come to mind?
I mean, I'd say it's just also just general around AI competency. Yeah, like if you imagine 30 years ago when, you know, product design process before computers, you know, you'd be really good at sketching and things like that. And then the Mac comes along and you need to build digital competency. It's like that with AI. It's just getting across all the different tools and the things, not all of them, the things that are relevant to you, building up your own understanding and confidence, even using these for experiments and personal things, and then bringing that to work. If you kind of open your eyes to what's possible, then you don't need to be at the bleeding edge, but you can start incorporating these tools into your everyday.
Time for just one or two more. Angie's just asked if you can reconfirm what AI tool you're using for market research.
That demo was Yabble. There's also synthetic users, and we also showed Peak, which is our own product.
Yeah, perfect. And then just final question from Matt said, looking at that Volvo commercial, how can Hollywood continue to justify multi-million-dollar special effects budgets?
They won't. That is definitely under threat.
Yeah,
I think Hollywood will, like 8K IMAX kind of quality will be the last to be impacted, but TVCs, like right now it's social, next it'll be TVCs in terms of quality and resolution, then it'll be movies, but you know, in 5 years, no, you won't need to spend 5 years rendering a Transformers movie.
Perfect. All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. But Jason, Tim, thank you so much again for your time. That was awesome.